He's the co-owner of jpDesignTheory, a website and design marketing agency. He provides a full set of services from marketing strategy and website production to photography and video editing. John is also a key planning member at WordCamp Orlando, so please welcome him to Florida Ball Pond.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, I'm going to do my best to speak as loud as I can so those of you in the back can hear. I want to thank you all for being here today. I have a lot to tell you, but I want to make this interactive. So as I'm talking about some of the points that I have on these slides, if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. Just raise your hand and let's dialogue. I guarantee you that you're not the only person that has a certain question that other people will be able to consume and be able to take away from as well. All right? So, okay. Did I lose? All right, stay with me here. There we go. All right, so who am I? I am somebody who's been in tech for many, many years. My first computer was a Tandy 1000. Anybody old enough to remember a Tandy 1000? All right, good. I got some fans out there. Fantastic. And so that's where I got started, right? And I loved getting into technology. I loved getting into computers, being able to get into a device that I can create something out of. And so that's where I started. Creating websites was something that I eventually got into doing once I got away from building computers. And then once I got to that point, I realized, well, just having a website wasn't really enough, right? And for the clients that we were creating websites for, they were happy that they had an online presence, but they weren't being seen. And so one of the reoccurring questions was like, hey, how do we get more people to the website? How do we get more traffic to the website? How do we get more people to understand, hey, we have this awesome service or product, but how do we get them to see it now that we have a really nice, beautiful website that works or whatnot, right? And so that's kind of where I got started and where I eventually went. We created Design Theory, it's probably, I think, 12 years now. One of the things that we, primarily do now is more on the consulting side, more so than the building side, even though that's still an aspect for us, of what we do. But really what we're trying to do is understand what our clients are looking for in terms of scale, in terms of growth, and understanding their story, and then utilizing that with our skills and our traits to be able to, create the stories, whether it's in, social media, whether it's in video, whether it's on print, things like that. We also have a community called the Hero Academy. So for those of you that are looking for situations like this, we get on once a week and we do conversations. It's a live show on Facebook where we talk about different marketing tips, strategies, and things like that. It's a closed group, but if it's something that you're looking to engage with, definitely, reach out. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to continue this conversation. So a lot of what I'm going to go over, I'll probably reiterate in one of the next shows. We'll take it from there. Okay, so for Google Analytics, I want to ask you guys something. How many of you have websites? I want you to leave your hands up. All right, so for those of you that have websites, how many of you have ever looked at your analytics through Google? Leave your hands up. Okay, so for those of you that still have your hands up that looked at your analytics for Google, when was the if you've looked at it in the last month, leave your hands up. Good. All right, fantastic. The reason why I kind of have that a bit of an exercise is because without understanding what what's going on with your content and how it's performing, you really don't know whether or not it's working for you and what's working for you, when it's working for you, and how to either continue to create that or to say, hey, we need to pivot and go this other direction. Whether that content is written form, whether that content is visual with pictures or visual with video, or whether that's with audio form. A lot of what we're talking about here is all stuff that's still routing to your website, but it's coming from other platforms that we're using, whether that's social media platforms or other types of content platforms that you can put your content on. The thing that I want to focus on, there's 4 parts I want to focus on with my talk today. When it comes to looking at analytics, I know when I first got into it, it was like, wow, okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. There's graphs, there's, lines, there's, some numbers over here, and I didn't know really where to begin. And I was really, really overwhelmed. And so when I started to ask people, say, hey, are you looking at your analytics? Are you looking at your analytics? More times than not, they were saying, 1, I don't know what you're talking about, or I do have it installed, but I haven't looked at it. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know how to read it. I don't know how to dissect it. I don't know what I'm doing. And so for those of you that have websites, if you don't have your analytics installed, I'm going to show you how to do that. But I want to hone in on the fact that if you don't, you want to make sure that you at least have it installed and have it configured, so that way when you do want to go back, if you're going to sit down with a consultant, or you're going to sit down with a partner or a friend who's going to look at your data, they're going to want to go back to a historical point to say, hey, let's see what you did at this point, and then let's start to look to see how things have changed over time. So for this talk, I want to talk about the home screen. We're going to get into the administration area. We're going to talk about reports. And then I have some tips that I'm going to give you guys to run with that you're going to be able to use today to start to see results on over the next couple days and weeks. Now, with the home screen, this is pretty much your main dashboard area when you're going to get to. I think we're going to get to that here. There's a lot here. The areas that I want to focus on, and let's see if this works. Oh, great. So the areas I want to focus on is the reports area, your home to tell you, your basic analytics to see what's going on there, which consists of your users, your sessions, your bounce rates, and your session durations. We also want to look at, how you're acquiring users. And then we also want to look at insights. And then one of the biggest things that I've been hearing a lot about today is like, one of the bigger questions is, when is the best time for me to post, right? All of this is your snapshot. And so for those of you that aren't checking on a regular basis, I implore you to check this almost on a daily basis. Go in here to see what's going on. If all you look at is just this, you don't get into the, the A and B test, like looking at reports between A and B testing and looking at all these other sub things that we're going to get into, at the very least, take your time and look at this and see, hey, what are my users at? And so if we're looking at to say, hey, what are my users looking at from yesterday, today, or from last week to, or last month to this month? What are we doing? Are we doing better? Or are we doing worse? What are my sessions looking like? And sessions meaning, how long, or what are people, when people get to your website, how long they're staying there? Are they staying, for more than one page? Are they looking at and reading content and whatnot? Your bounce rate. Your bounce rate is something that's really, really important. And I saved this here, even though this is incorrect. This is actually our website. And I try to go as recent as I possibly can. So this is probably about 3 weeks ago. Our bounce rate was at 87%. It's lower now, but when I looked at that, I was kind of surprised. I was like, that's kind of interesting. And if you look at the little numbers underneath it where it shows like whether it's plus or minus, the green being good and the red being down, we were up 3.4%. The reason why I want to talk about this is because what I found out by looking at my analytics is that 20% of my traffic isn't even from the States. 20% of my traffic is either coming from China or Russia. And if you're looking at the news over the past couple of weeks and past couple of months, there's some funny things that are happening from certain people in those areas. And what I was looking at when I dug a little deeper into my analytics, I was understanding that they were only jumping on my website to like grab a download or just landing there and then quickly jumping off. And I was like, man, that's kind of interesting that my bounce rate went up so high, which that means is like, so let me go back. Bounce rate means when somebody lands on your website, right, from whatever means, through a link or through a URL or whatever page, if they land there and they stay, meaning they go to another page or they stay and they read and whatnot, that's good. Your bounce rate will go lower. But the amount of people that come on your website immediately and within the first couple seconds, get there, look around, and then leave, that's bounce. What we want to do is we want to have a low bounce rate. You want to have as low as you possibly can go. Typically, with some of our clients, we have about, anywhere between 25 to 45%. We'd like to get it below 20% if at all possible, but it's a variable. We kind of have to work it out and kind of see what's going on and what's working, what's not working. The reason why I bring this up is because 20% of my traffic was coming from sources that I had no particular care for. They're not customers of mine. They're not going to be customers of mine. They were only there to look at content, and what I found was probably stealing that content to then repurpose and use in other platforms. Not a good thing, but one of the things that I'm going to have to end up doing is blocking some of those countries so that way I can bring my bounce rate down and make sure that I'm concentrating my efforts on the users that I actually want to consume and see my content. Okay? Session duration, it's also a big thing to kind of see. And the reason why, those two kind of go hand in hand, because if your bounce rate is really, really high, then your sessions or your session durations is probably also going to be really low. We want to have a larger session duration, anywhere between, maybe about a minute to a couple of minutes, depending on how much content you have on your website. For those of you that blog, if you're writing, which I just learned a couple weeks ago, you want to be writing close to 2,000 words or more, and probably by 4 to 5 times a week. You're going to want to make sure you're going to want to have a higher session duration, right? Because it's going to take people a little bit more time to read through your content. But if they're only getting there and they're reading your headline and they're reading the first paragraph and then they're leaving, that's going to affect your bounce rate, and that's also going to affect your session duration. And so these things are kind of the top things that you're going to want to look at to say, hey, what are some high level metrics to say, is my content actually working? The next thing that I want to talk about is how do you acquire users? At the very on the dashboard side of things, I can see that I have traffic channels, and we'll show this a little bit more in a different screen. But I have traffic channels, I have source mediums, and I have referrals. This is also really good for those of you that are blogging, that are sending your content or sharing your content on other platforms like Twitter, like Facebook, like Medium, or maybe even other industry platforms. You're going to want to understand, hey, is it really working for me to spend my time and post or repost my content on these platforms if I'm not really getting the traffic back? Or do I really want to spend a lot of time on that social platform or let's say, for example, I'm spending a lot of time on Twitter, but then a lot of my traffic is really coming from Facebook. Do I want to spend a lot of my time and effort if I'm doing it myself on Twitter? Maybe not. Maybe I want to automate that process to satisfy those few, and then maybe I'll spend much more time creating good ads on Facebook, engaging in Facebook, maybe in groups and things like that, and sharing my content there, because a lot of my traffic is more so coming from that platform. At the very least, from this dashboard, I can see at a snapshot, hey, here's what's working, here's what's not. This part right here, if you guys on the right or on my left, on the right, can see the users of time of day. This is really, really important. When they started to roll this out on the dashboard side of things, for me to see from the time of day, looking at this, really we're looking at about anywhere from, I don't know about this time, 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, but really midday, around 12 o'clock to 2 p.m. is when, at least at the time of when I ran this, was when we were seeing most of my traffic, which means to me, okay, well, if I'm scheduling my posts, I probably want to schedule my post to go out around that time of day, right? Any questions? Great.
Is that based on our time zone?
Yes. So when you go in there, it usually is based on your exact time zone for when you're logging in and your account. And by default, it's usually looking at the last 7 days. When you go to the top, you can actually say, hey, I want to see this metric based on the last 30 days or longer. But typically when you first log in and look at the dashboard, you're seeing your time zone, and it's usually up to the minute, at least up to the day before. So if you looked at it today, it would show you the last 7 days up to yesterday in terms of data. Yes?
Can you tell me why it's important for you to post like just before that peak time? Exactly why? I'm not sure I understand why.
So when you think about consistency, right? If we're saying, looking at the data, most of our traffic is coming at this time of day, then I want to make sure that I'm not only posting my content, let's say blogs and whatever, it's videos or whatever, I'm posting fresh content at that time every day. People have become, used to coming onto my website at that time of day to consume this content. If you think about your favorite TV show or even a favorite series, right? You know that show is going to come out with a new episode every Sunday at a certain time, or every Wednesday at a certain time. So I've programmed it in my mind, hey, I'm going to clear my schedule for this time of day or this time of night for me to consume this content. Same thing applies here. Prep your content so that way you can release it at that time, so that way when the majority of the people are going to be there anyway, go ahead and give them something else to do. If not, they're coming for that reason anyway. Or even maybe create another reason for them to be there. They're already coming to you at this time of day for this. Give them something else. It's like, oh, this is bonus material. Here you go. Make sense? Yes?
Just curious, how does the bounce rate actually quantify? Is it 30 seconds? Is it below average of?
I can't tell you specifically what they're looking at, but it's usually within a threshold, I would say, from what I've noticed, between 3 to 5 seconds. Before it's very fast. Yeah, it's very fast for them to consume, to say that this is what counts. Yes.
What is that time of day widget called?
Say it again.
The widget.
Oh, this one right here. It just says when do your users visit, is what it shows up for. I'm going to show you another screen in a second where so this part, like here, this insights part, hit that. It might have it in there. If it's not showing for you by default, go to the insights on the top right if you're on right now, and then it'll probably show you a drop down where you can click on that to kind of see that data as well. Yes.
About having 2,000 words in the content.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing?
Yeah. So if you want to permeate, and we were talking about this at the breakout session earlier today, but if you really want to permeate Google's algorithm to make sure that when they come back to crawl your website, that they're ranking your content. Everything else that we used to do in terms of keywords, good titles, things like that are great. But what they're looking at more so now is at least 2,000 characters or 2,000 words or more. You still have to have your images and things like that, and you want to be at least 4 to 5 times a week. Yeah, and that's unfortunately, I do another talk about social media too, and that's the thing is that unfortunately, you're not the only ones that are creating content, right? But you have to create great content, and so where it used to be where you could just say, hey, I'll just put up a post that's about 500 words with my featured image, and then a couple keywords, and that would work so long as I put it out there in different social platforms. Not it anymore. It's got to be something to where you're really diving in on something. Now, the key to that, I would say, is if you're, solving an answer, solving a problem, solving a challenge, give your answer at first because of attention spans are starting to become shorter and shorter. So, have a good title, give the answer right after the title in your first paragraph, and then explain the process in long form.
What are some of the most common reasons for having like a high bounce rate? Like could it be content?
Yes. So it could be how you've marketed your website, maybe how you've created maybe the tags or the titles that you have for your homepage or different pages. They may be misleading to the visitors that are coming to your website. Then that's another reason why you want to have a lower bounce rate, because if people are coming to your website and they're leaving immediately, they got to your website some way, somehow. Your metrics will tell you in a lot of cases how they kind of got there, but if they're not staying, that means you're ranking for the wrong things.
Okay.
So that's why that's important.
So like the keywords, the content that you develop, how you title the pages.
Yep. All your metadata, which is all of that information plus more, is very important. So, whatever people are typing in, in search to then have your website come up. When they click on that, they're coming there because they want to get more information on that. But when they get there and that's not what they find, they're like, they're lying to me. I'm out. Okay. Any other questions? That was good. Great.
Okay. Regarding the time of post.
Yes.
So would you say that it's not best, but suggests that I say, hey, I'm posting at 3 p.m. every Tuesday. Check out the blog, or should I just go with the flow and see I
see where you're going. Yes. So yes. But I wouldn't necessarily put it on your website, but what I would use is social media to promote the fact that, hey, this is coming up. Okay. Kind of like commercials when you think again, I use the TV scenario, right? Where it's like, hey, commercial right before, an hour before. Who used to watch How to Get Away with, or not How to Get Away with Murder? What was it? How to Get Away with Murder? Scandal.
Oh.
So if you remember, they used to have a timeline, right before come Wednesday night. It's like, oh, in an hour, in 30 minutes, You could do that. Use Instagram Live. Use IGTV, right? Get on Instagram Live. Get on Facebook. Like, hey, new content coming out on the website in an hour, in 30 minutes, in 20 minutes. It's going to be about this. All of that stuff is great, and use the link. Have a link going back to your website, so that way they know to find it. But I would do it that way. Okay.
Meta description.
Yes.
Meta descriptions. What is your best just one thing you can say about meta descriptions?
So she asked about meta descriptions. What's the best advice that I have on that? So I would use, for those of you that are blogging that are using WordPress, there's a popular plugin called Yoast SEO. Use that. Don't necessarily, be confined to like the red, green, yellow, but use the. I know it'll drive you crazy if you really try to get to the green, and when you're like just there and it's like, I'm at the yellow, I'm almost there. Don't worry about that necessarily, but follow the, for the most of us, it's like, we're fine with the yellow. But for the most part, what you want to do is use the feature that it has in terms of, creating your titles, using your keywords, and then creating that snippet. Make sure that snippet is set up. So you have your description, whether that's for the page or the post, have all that stuff set as best as you possibly can. There's features that we're going to talk about here in terms of like what keywords you should use and things like that. But if you have those things filled out, one of the things that a lot of people seem to fail to do when it comes to Yoast SEO is that they'll set it up for all their pages and all their posts and they'll never go back. Don't. Use this to then go back to see what should be working based on the keywords that you're finding out that's bringing traffic to your website. Okay? All right. So the insights area. The insights area that's just off the main dashboard will show you a bunch of information. And what I love about this is for those of us that don't really have time, can I just jump into this and kind of see these drop downs to understand, hey, just give me a quick snapshot of what I need to know so I can keep it going, or I could relay this information to my content providers or my content producers or whoever's on my team or whatnot, so that way they know what's working. What I love about this is that you have, like I said, the snapshots. We have basic performance. You hit the drop down, shows you some basic performance. You've got your, where do you get your users from, which is what you were asking for in the back there, Eric. Did you find it?
Yep.
Fantastic. So you have that. You have understanding trends. For those of you, how many people know about Google Trends? Oh man, you guys should be using Google Trends. So Google Trends will tell you exactly what's popular right now. So if you want to create content and kind of catch the wave of what's going on, whatever that it is. For those of you that may be on the weather side of things, we had Dorian that came just past here for a while that was hanging out, and then it's going across the eastern side of things. Everybody's searching for it. Everybody's looking for it. It's definitely trending. If you create content and you're in that sector and you're talking about Dorian, find out what's trending and look at those keywords that's trending, look at those titles and things like that, and then write something similar. You'll ride that wave with everybody else. It's probably a bad pun in terms of riding a wave, but you'll be able to ride that with everybody else and kind of catch some recognition. Now, the good thing about doing that is that you'll be in the running with a couple of other people. But if you're not in that industry and you create content about that, what could happen is your bounce rate could suffer because people will say, hey, you're talking about storms and hurricanes and whatnot. That's interesting. Let me see what else you're talking about. Maybe you talked about previous stuff, and they get to your website. And it's like, no, you're talking about cats and dogs, and that's not it. I'm out, right? So all of those things are there, plus more. I couldn't fit it all in there, unfortunately. And I say this again, there's so much stuff that's in there. It's just hard to keep up. However, really take the time to get in there, okay? But spend some time in the insights area. You'll really be edified with that. Okay. Hello. Okay, the admin area. For those of you that don't have Google Analytics installed, you want to spend some time over here because on this area you'll be able to create your property. This is where if you're putting in a new website, this is where you're going to get your code for the website. You're going to get the tracking ID that we can use. Depending on what plugins and systems that you're using or websites, whether it's Squarespace or some other areas, they might ask you for different pieces of this code. Maybe it's the property or maybe it's the whole code itself, the snippet. I don't want to show mine in there for security reasons or whatever, but it's a small piece of code that you're going to, once you click on it, gives you the whole thing and it highlights it for you, and you'll copy that and you'll paste it within your content, your CMS platform, right? And then at that point, from then on, they'll start tracking, Google will be able to start tracking the interactions that are happening on your website. This is also an area that you're going to use for if you're going to create users. One of the things that we do is we will guide our customer or our clients into this area to say, hey, I just need you to add us as a user for us to be able to read your content or read your analytics, but we don't need access to be able to create other users or manage it or anything like that. We just want to be able to do that. So for those of you that, for example, and say, hey, I want to work with somebody, you don't need to give them your Google ID and password. Don't do that. You just need to come in here. You'll be able to, and I have it on another screen, I'll show you, but you'll be able to come in here and you'll be able to give somebody else access and select a certain level of access. Let me show you that here. Wait, we'll get to that in a second. But you'll be able to give them a certain level of access before, that way they can just see that data. Now, for those of you that are, if you're creating a property for your first time, or maybe you have a secondary website or whatnot, you're going to want to come here to create property. When you get there, it's going to ask you, whether it's web or it's an application or or something else or maybe both. That's fairly new. For the most part, you're going to click on web, and then once you click on web, it's going to give you the fields. Oh man, already? Good grief. Okay, it's going to give you the fields for you to be able to get that tracking code to be able to add it to your website. All right, let me skip forward. Then, so here's where it's going to ask you for the website name. You're going to put the name of the website. Don't put the URL twice because the URL is already going to be used in that area there. You're going to select your industry. It's got a nice little drop down with a whole bunch of features for what your industry is going to be. Your time zone, and you were asking about time zone before. You're going to set your time zone. By default, it's set to LA, so you want to make sure you change that to the eastern side or wherever you're going to be. And then that way you get your data in the right form. Now, this is the user management area. So once you click on that admin area and you hit user management, it's going to bring you this screen. For example, we have a couple users that are listed here, and some of them for some reason aren't showing their names, but we've got several. And so once we're there, we're able to actually hit the drop down and say, hey, we want them to modify, create, manage, or just view, and that way they can just, I can manage. And then if something happens, let's say for example we need to kick them off the team. I just got to go here, kick them off the team, and that's it. They're gone. Right? Instead of saying, hey, I need you to change this password, I need to change this password, I don't have to worry about that. Okay. Let's talk about audience overview. This is it's a lot of data that's here, but I want to focus just on this center part here. Okay? When you go to your dashboard and you click on audience, go to the overview. We're going to go over some of these other things here, but for the most part, you can kind of hang out over here in the overview section. Again, we're looking at users. We're looking at the amount of sessions that were created by the users. The number of sessions per user is interesting, which means that per user, we had 383 users. Of those 383 users, 379 of them were new. That's a problem for me. That means that as much as for what I'm doing, at least within the amount of time, this was from July 28th to August 26th. Within that month time frame, we had over 383 users, but 379 of them were new. Why? How did I not attract the people that were there a month before back this time? Am I not creating enough content? Is the content that I'm creating not effective? Am I attracting users from areas that I don't really need to attract or I don't want to attract? They're affecting my numbers. They're affecting my metrics, right? And then while they're there, I can see they're only here for about, their session's about, just a little over one session that they're here. So when they're here, they're really here for a few moments and they're leaving. Overall, we were seeing about 589 page views, which would sound nice. If the target audience was actually who I really wanted. Pages per session about 1.44 or almost 1.5 pages per session. The average, again, we're seeing it again, 0.53 seconds, and our bounce rate again at 87.4. Down here at the bottom we have demographics. Again, 304 of those users are English, or at least their language was in English. If I wanted to go down even further, I can see what country each of them were for, and that's what I did to find out what was happening with what was going on here. And if I want to go even further to see what browser or what operating system they were using, if they were using Windows or Mac and things like that, I can do that. Quick tip for those of you that are developing or thinking about developing a website, it's very important for you to understand what operating system and what browser people are using, because if you're still designing stuff for Internet Explorer, it is not going to look the same as it does in Chrome. Internet Explorer, I still, as a designer, I still hate it, but people still use it. It's good to know that. Now, if your target base and majority of users are using Internet Explorer, you need to know that because you need to make sure your website looks great there, all right, and is working there. Okay, still good on time. All right, so from the audience overview area, we have demographics, we have interests, we have geography, we have behavior, and we have user flows. And acquisition we'll talk about in a second. The demographics are pretty simple. What you're going to get here is to understand who's consuming your content in terms of age, in terms of gender, and things like that. Great information to find out depending on what content you're creating. Their interests, are they into sports? Are they into literature? Are they into music? All that stuff Google's going to kind of tell you. So if you're creating content that's not among their interests, retool your content or fix it to what it should be, right? Geography, where are they coming from? Around the country, around the world, around the state. This is good stuff to know, especially if you're going to be traveling or you do travel, or maybe you're creating content that is region specific. You're going to want to understand and spend some time in the geography area to find out, hey, am I creating content for the areas that are most popular or that are most consuming my content instead of when the demographic that I thought was. The behavior. What are they doing when they get to the website? I have a really good slide about this, like where they come in at, what they go to next, and where they fall off. The user flow is kind of along the same to see, you know, what they're doing, and then acquisition, where are they coming from? Okay. I want to stop here for a second because I want to emphasize this very, very, very much. In terms of your content, you want to leverage it as much as you can. The best way to do that is to engage. Maybe that's engaging through your website. Maybe you're doing you're embedding a live video from YouTube, or you're doing live, or you're engaging maybe through social media, through other platforms, and you're drawing them back to your website. We have to remember that, you know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these things aren't platforms that we own. We can't control them. If they decide to change tomorrow, go to a paid platform or paid subscription tomorrow or whatever, we may lose a lot of that segment that's over there. So we want to make sure that we're leveraging them for what they are and bringing them back to our website to further engage with them, to give them more content, give them more of what they're looking for, give them more value. That's something that we can control, which is our website. But we can't control what's going on those other platforms. We don't own them. Create as often as you possibly can. In this day that we have right now, you know, I just learned from Dr. Gale that over 2,500 podcasts are being created every week. That's bananas. New podcasts every week? Because I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I want to start creating podcasts, right? Because I've been an avid consumer of podcasts for years. And to hear that, over 2,500 people or 2,500 new podcasts are being created every week, that's bananas. But they're creating, right? And they're probably repurposing their content on that platform, probably taking the text from that and transcribing it onto their blog posts, maybe doing video behind the scenes or whatnot. But they're creating. You're going to have to create. We just have to. We just can't be one form anymore. But the cool thing about using analytics is that we can tell which of those forms is really working for us the best. And the last is to be relevant. I can't stress enough about paying attention to your metrics to find out how relevant you actually are. There was a time where myself and my team we would create new blog posts at least 4 to 5 times a day, and we were doing it consistently for several months, and then we came to find out we weren't relevant in any of the areas we want to be relevant in. I still get hits from stuff that we wrote about years ago that we don't even talk about anymore. Okay. All right, acquisition overview. You definitely want to spend a lot of time here. The reason why is because this section right here, to find out where your traffic is coming from. For us, out of that same segment of the 29th to the 27th, our organic search was up 260. We had 269 hits that came from organic. 77 of them were direct. Those are the ones I really want to focus on, like the direct ones, because that means they got a link from something, from somebody's website, maybe from social, or well, we have 17 from social, but the direct ones got my link from somewhere, right? Maybe from my profile, and then they went from my profile there, whatever, or maybe from a competitor's site, or maybe something that I put out. The referrals, that's where it's probably from somebody else's website. Maybe you're doing work with somebody else, or maybe you did a collaboration with somebody or with another company, and they have your website, maybe they have your link or your bio or something on their website that links back to yours. That's the referrals. And then the social. We've got 17 visitors that came from that. All right. Same stats are still going to be there in terms of our behavior, which is still interesting to kind of see, because out of our bounce rate, was it 91% of the organic search? Our bounce rate out of the organic search was 91%. That's not good. That means that whatever keywords that we're measuring for, that we're putting out there, that people are searching or hitting on to get to our website, 91% of them aren't really happy with that, coming from organic search. Okay. Okay, user flow. Good with time. All right, user flow. This is really, really important. For those of you that sell online, for those of you that create content or that have breadcrumbs that go from one piece to another, maybe you have your website is more of a story. It's like you get to one page, maybe a landing page, and then you want them to consume more content somewhere else. Then you want them to consume more content somewhere else before they maybe buy, before maybe they subscribe to your mailing list or subscribe to something. You want to understand their user flow. That means, like, so for example, up here, our main website, out of the segment of, where is this coming from? Of 196 coming from the US, 109 of them were coming right to our main homepage, right? From there, they spider out to several places, and they spider out to other places. We had 95 of those from India. We had 10 of those from the Philippines, 8 from Nigeria, 7 from Australia, and then 103 from the other. The reason why I don't necessarily care for India or the Philippines is that they're not my target audience, and I know what they're doing when they come to my website. 10? Oh man, okay, all right. So in a nutshell, for those of you that sell online, and if, let's say for example, they get to your shop page, they select an item and they add it to their cart, and then they get to the checkout page and then they leave, you need to understand this. Because if they're leaving, something is wrong. Maybe they didn't like the price. Maybe there was an additional tax that was on there that they didn't care for, or whatever. Or maybe they weren't able to check out. Maybe something's broken. We need to understand that so that way we can figure out, hey, let's fix this, right? Okay, comparative data. This is also important. For those of you that have your analytics installed, go back and look to see what you were doing at this point today, or maybe the last month of this year, and then go back to see what you did the year prior. To be able to do that, you're going to want to use this feature up here. Your date and stuff is always going to be up there, but then there's this little checkbox that says compare to. You're going to hit custom and then select your alternate date. And then what that does is it gives you two lines. This is your current, and then this is this is supposed to be the current and the previous, to show you what happened before at the same time, and then what's happening right now. So for those of you that do seasonal content, you definitely want to check this out, because you're going to understand and say, hey, last Christmas you did really, really well with content about this, that, and the third. This year, or maybe 2 years ago, we did this. The year before we did this. This year we're not really sure. Let's look at what we did before 2 years ago, because that did really, really well. Let's do that again come this season, right? And again, you're looking at all tips, whether it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, all those types of things. Or maybe you had a product launch. Maybe that's the first, at this time last year, that's when you launched the redesign of your website. What changed? Did it work out for you? Maybe it didn't work out for you. Looking at the two of those side by side is really, really important. And this feature you could do with every metric that's on Google Analytics, not just the flow of the users. All right. Okay. I kind of talked about this before, but benchmarking your data, having an idea of where your analytics may have started to where it is today. You want to benchmark your data so that way you can see what's working and what isn't working. A lot of times, we'll have customers that come and say, hey, we want to do a redesign on our website. And before we tell them and say, hey, okay, it's going to be this price and da-da-da-da, we say, why? Why do you want to redo it? Oh, we haven't redone our website in like 3 years and we want to, freshen it up, new colors, new this, new that. Okay. Are you looking at your data? Because if we go in there and start changing stuff around that people are already used to, we could lose a lot of them. And your metrics could tank because they're used to a certain way that they get on your website, purchase something, find content, watch the video, download this, all of that, right? Optimize everything. Spend some time using, Google has a website analyzer to say if your website, mobile compatible or Google friendly is what it's called, right? Make sure that it's optimized. Make sure that you have your alternate tags for all your images. Make sure you're using keywords and meta descriptions. Make sure that your page titles are filled out. All of those things to really put your best foot forward. When Google decides to send its crawler to go look at your content, you want to make sure that all your ducks in a row. Otherwise, it's going to say, hey, it's missing the H1 tags. It's not describing this. And I'm out. Scrap the whole thing. And you could have spent a lot of time creating that content, and then Google's like, nah, I don't care. I don't really care. It doesn't fit what we need in order for us to put it in the algorithm to say that this is relevant. Create content often. We talked about this before. It's really, really important that you have to create content on a regular basis. One of the, I really call him an influencer, Gary Vee, recently was talking about how, you really want to try to create about 100 pieces of content a day, which is bananas. But really, if you really listen to what he was saying, he was really talking about creating that content or that 100 count over different types of platforms, whether that be 20 tweets, maybe 20 Facebook posts, 40 Instagram comments and things like that, interactions, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 blog posts. All of those kind of count towards that, but still the idea is to create a lot of content so that way you're out there among people. You're reminding people that you're the authority on your subject matter or on your products and on your services. And again, using the 80-20 rule. You don't want to spend a lot of time out there selling. You want to spend more of your efforts, providing value, answering questions, creating, being a little controversial if you can when your industry leaders are talking about this and you're like, no, they're missing the point. What you really want to focus on is this. That's what's going to really help to drive up your ranking. And of course, last, know your audience and create a plan. All right, 5 minutes. All right, let me skip forward a little bit. Okay, let me get to questions. How do we have no questions now?
Dear,
Deer with headlights. Okay, I know I had to run through this pretty fast, and I apologize for that. I do have this slide in better detail. I tried not to put as much content on this, so that way, you guys didn't spend much time reading this. But however, if you want to get a copy of it, come see me. I'll give you a copy that has a lot of more of my notes and much more content. Yes.
The tool that you mentioned to optimize everything, what is that exactly? Where can we find it?
There's a couple. Oh man, I'm trying to think back. There's a couple tools that you want to use. One is going to be make sure that you're using do a search for Google Friendly. Is my website Google Friendly? Use that. There's a website, Google Trends. Definitely check that out. Sign up for or connect your analytics to the Google Search Console, so that way you can grab the metrics from there as well. Google Search Console will tell you if there's issues with your website, and it'll tell you what those issues are so you can correct them. So definitely use that as well. Yes?
Do you have any recommendations for analytics report tools? Say you have to give a report to somebody after a campaign. Are there any great tools that you'd like to?
So Google Analytics does give you the ability for you to export your metrics, and you can create custom metrics and export them. And I believe you could schedule it. I haven't done this in a little while, but at the time you can do that. So let's say you create a custom report, or in essence, you can even customize your dashboard. But you can create a custom report, and then that custom report can also be emailed to you or downloaded to you. Or if you wanted to, you can email that out to your customers. So that way they're just seeing the information you want them to see. And you can set the intervals of that, however frequent or infrequent you want it to go. That would be the best. There's paid ones that are out there that give you more of a white label. This unfortunately comes right from Google, so it's like you can't really put your logo or anything like that in it, but it gives you the data you want. You know what I mean? Question?
So not directly Google Analytics.
Sure.
Google PageSpeed Insights. Do you ever use that?
PageSpeed Insights.
How much storage should we, because sometimes you just get horrible ratings. I was just curious.
Yeah,
Some say it's crap.
I haven't used theirs, although I would. I use Pingdom Tools. Pingdom Tools I really like, because the way that it breaks out all the elements from the JavaScript to the images and what another code, CSS codes that's happening on your website to actually bring it up, so that way you can really optimize it. I use that more because I'm familiar with it, but I wouldn't say, for me, that's a little easier to read than the Google's is.
Does it translate to better? Do their tools kind of help you get better speed?
They do, absolutely, they do, because it'll tell you. And what I like about it is that it'll give you like a bar graph, and so the further the bar graph is in terms of the element, is like, hey, this shouldn't be taking this long. It should be more in the green area. It's like it's like green, yellow, red, and that's why I like that a little bit better. It's a little easier to read.
Thank you.
But yeah, good question. Yes. Do I have that last page? There we go. Yes. Obviously, you can visit me on the website, but find me on Twitter. It's probably one of the easier ways to contact me. Whether it's right there, send me you can send me a DM, or you can send me an actual post. Chances are, if you have a question, there's other people that are following me that may have the same question. Go ahead and ask for it. Unfortunately, I'm on it all the time. So I would love to engage with you there. I have business cards up here if you guys want to actually email me directly. My general email is up there. Actually, it's email. It should be email. There's no dash in the email. It's just email. But yeah, you can connect with me that way as well. I think I'm holding you guys up from lunch. Any other questions? All right. I'll be around all day, guys. So stop me if you have any questions.